let's talk about trans women prisoners. There was a trans woman called Karen White, who was formerly known as Stephen Wood. He identified as a woman, so she identified as a woman, I should say, of course. Still had male genitalia, and when she arrived at Newhall Jail in Wakefield, she promptly raped two of the female inmates. Dominic Raab, the Justice Secretary, said this is not going to happen anymore, and that trans women who still have male genitalia will no longer be transferred to female jails. Many people might say about time. Common sense at last. Let's talk to her. She's a writer for The Spectator and the founder of the Standing for Women organisation, my friend Kellie Jay Keen. Hello, Kellie Jay.
Well, good morning to you.
Well, this is good news, isn't it?
Yeah, about time. The absurdity of sending men into women's prisons is finally going to be over, although not quite. But, certainly sending male genitalia to women's prisons is over.
Yeah, I mean, my question there, Kellie Jay, is, I have to say, we call them trans women, we call them she, these are the rules. But it seems to me utterly insane that people with male genitals were sent to female prisons just because they said, I now identify as a woman. Karen White, when she was known as Stephen Wood, was a convicted sex attacker. And when transferred to Newhall Jail for Women, promptly sexually assaulted two of the female inmates. There's another story at a jail called Bronzefield, where female inmates were said to be extremely uncomfortable after the arrival of a transgender prisoner who still had male genitalia, and she was found having sex with another inmate. I mean, what goes through the minds of the officials who decide this is a good idea?
Well, I think not very much. And certainly not very much when it comes to women. You know, in the discussions, and I've read through Hansard, they've been talking about sending men to women's prisons since the 90s. And Norman Tebbit actually raised grave concerns about this issue. And he was promptly ignored and probably declared to be a Nazi or a bigot. But look, when you go to prison for a sex offence against women or children, and you're a man, why wouldn't you say you want to go to a women's prison? I mean, why wouldn't you do that? And it's up to us, it's up to grown-ups, and it's up to people in charge of safeguarding those women to think about the impact on those women. Does it make their lives in prison more difficult to have a man, regardless of how he identifies, actually serving time with them? Of course it does. In one of the prisons, we had a woman come and speak at our Speakers' Corners events, and she said that for the crime of misgendering, which for those people who don't know means calling a man, for the crime of misgendering and using he pronouns.
You're Britain's top misgenderer, you are.
Hey! But for that, she got more time serving in prison for saying she was uncomfortable showering next to a fully intact male. No, it's look, once you create this legal fiction and once you're governed, Kevin, and all people on TV are governed by this nonsensical idea that even a rapist, you have to say she raped. And I thank Ricky Gervais for raising this issue. But even in that situation, once we do that, all bets are off whether or not we can actually keep any sanity. And clearly we can't.
What I have to say here, Kellie, is I hear you. But what worries me about the system hitherto, and by the way, just Mr. Raab still has to get this policy properly ratified, and if it does go through, basically no male identifying as a woman who still has male genitalia will be transferred unless with the express permission of a government minister. So that's where we stand with this, and the new Prime Minister, of course, will have to approve of this policy. But what worries me hitherto, Kellie Jay, is this. I mean, why weren't they not thinking about the welfare of the female inmates? Because, you know, these are not necessarily the most robust of individuals. We're talking about many of these female prisoners are obviously vulnerable, and no one seemed to care about them.
Well, look, it's the same old, no one cares about girls in schools having to have mixed-sex toilets. No one cares about women in workplaces having mixed-sex toilets and no access to female-only, meaning female-only spaces anymore. And obviously, women in prison, we've already completely abandoned them. Many of them are vulnerable, as you rightly say. They've been victims of child sexual abuse. And so they've already been cast aside before they got to prison. And then they get to prison and we just remind them that we don't actually care about them at all. And we'll put them at grave risk and discomfort. Many of them are in there for non-payment of fines. And there's 3,000 women in the prison estate. So and there's 12,000 men in the 80,000 population of prisoners in this country who have actually committed crimes, sexual crimes against women and children. So when we look at that, you just put one of those men into a women's prison, you totally change the nature of that prison for every single woman serving in that space. And maybe we should make it, I don't like quotas or anything like that, but I'd like to see a quota in the number of times women are mentioned when it comes to things that impact women. And I'd like that quota to be about 70-30.
And when you mention women, maybe don't call them people with cervixes.
Yeah, that would be nice. That would be great, thanks.
I mean, would you feel that Dominic Raab getting this initiative in action, do you feel that we are beginning to hit something of a turning point?
I think these politicians have finally realised it's a vote winner. Labour have got to catch up. But I don't think... I don't know Dominic Raab very well, but do I think this current Conservative government has actually cared about women and allowed all this to happen all this time? Yeah, I do. I think they've allowed it all. It's been under their governance that we've seen all of these things continue to happen or be introduced. So I think it's a vote winner, and I'll take that. If that's their motivation, I'm happy. Let's hope that all the politicians realise that women in this country are not going to vote for politicians who refuse to centre our interests in the right sort of situation. So when it comes to women's prisons, women are the most important people in that debate. When it comes to women-only spaces, women are the most important people in that debate. And until they get that, they're not going to get our votes.
You've got behind you the dictionary definition of a female, or a woman, adult human female. Rishi Sunak has been particularly reticent to go down that route before. When he came on to Julia Hartley-Brewer's breakfast show here on talkTV, she said, yes, can you define a woman? He didn't do it. He didn't want to do it. If he really wants to be Prime Minister, we should make him do that in the middle of this campaign, shouldn't we?
Oh, 100%. I'll take the definition of the word woman, and I'll also take any of his tax affairs. I'll take both of those things. That's what we want to see from Sunak. At the moment, Liz Truss is the woman for me. She said that she's going to return to the idea of girls having girl-only spaces in schools. I mean, fancy that being something that we even have to say out loud. Yeah,
it is... Well, let's hope things get a bit more sensible in the future. Always a pleasure to talk to you, Kellie Jay. That's Kellie Jay Keen, writer for The Spectator and founder of Standing for Women.